Pete Hegseth stepped into the hearing chamber like it was his stage. Not a courtroom, not a congressional inquiry. Stage. His suit was sharp, blue, tailored to send a message: confidence, control, defiance. Adjusted his tie like a man preparing. For prime time, not a public hearing, the room wasn't quiet. It never was during these kinds of events. Murmurs floated like static. Staffers leaned over notes. Phones buzzed on silent mode. A low hum of tension, the kind that precedes either brilliance or collapse. And at the far end of the panel, Jasmine Crockett still focused. Her fingers moved calmly over a folder, one page at a time. No eye contact, no smile, no reaction, just quiet calculation. Pete didn't notice, or he didn't care. He grinned, waved to a familiar face in the gallery, then leaned back in his chair like he already owned the room. Cameras locked in, C-SPAN, Reuters, independent streamers. Even Twitter accounts with 2,000 followers were already pushing clips of his entrance. The hearing hadn't even started, and yet everyone knew why they were here. This wasn't about legislation. This was about domination. A chance to embarrass, to go viral, to score points. And Pete was hungry. The chairman cleared his throat. Today's hearing will address. Nobody listened, because the moment Pete was given the floor, everything changed. He didn't wait. Before we waste any more taxpayer dollars, he said, voice dripping with sarcasm, I'd like to ask the Congresswoman from Texas whether she plans to use TikTok to respond, or if she brought real notes today. A few chuckles from the right side of the aisle. He smiled wider. Jasmine didn't look. Up, she turned a page. Pete pressed harder. I mean, I get it. You're popular. You know how to clap back. The internet loves a good viral quote. But can you actually read legislation, or just trending hashtags? Silence, not from the audience, from her. Still no eye contact. No movement, just the whisper of a page turning. And yet it was the silence that echoed louder than any insult. The smirk on Pete's face flickered for just a moment, just one beat. But it was enough, because silence wasn't weakness. Not this time. It was warning, and the room didn't know it yet, but it had already begun to shift. Something was coming, something sharp, something fast, and it wouldn't be a clap back. It would be a reckoning, a 17-second collapse. But first he had to keep digging. Pete leaned forward again. Do you even know what this hearing is about? Or are you here to film content for your followers? This time he laughed at his own joke, louder than necessary. A kind of laugh that demands tension. But no one joined in, except the same two aides who always laughed when it was safe. Jasmine finally lifted her eyes. Just a glance. Quick, controlled. But it was enough to freeze the room like glass cracking under pressure. Pete felt it. The cameras caught it. A slow shift in weight. A glance toward the chairman. A murmur across the press row. Jasmine closed her folder. Placed it flat on the desk. Folded her hands over it. The war hadn't started yet, but the countdown had. And Pete, he had no idea that his 17-second humiliation was already in motion. Because power isn't loud, it waits. And when it speaks, it ends careers with precision. 2 nights before the hearing, Pete Hegseth was pacing in a private studio in Manhattan. The Fox cameras were off. The studio lights dimmed. But the performance hadn't stopped. He was still on. Trust me, she can't handle facts. This isn't TikTok. It's war. He said it while rehearsing for a segment that hadn't aired yet. Behind the scenes, a producer queued up overlays. Pete practiced one-liners like punches. Tested tone, measured delivery. Everything was prepped down to which clip they'd drop when his name started trending. This wasn't politics. This was production. He called it a preemptive strike. Privately, he was gunning for a viral clip, something that would circulate before the hearing even ended. What he didn't know was that Jasmine Crockett had seen it all. Every podcast insult, every soundbite, every smug grin as he mocked her. On national television, she didn't respond online. No tweet, no quote, no thread, just silence and a folder. She opened it slowly. Inside, printed screenshots, footnotes, receipts, 2 years of commentary, 3 think tanks, 5 lobbyists. 12 inconsistencies in Pete's public military claims. She didn't just study him. She mapped him page after page. She underlined. Contradictions then? She wrote a single word on the front of the file. Receipts she didn't tell her staff. Didn't make a statement. Didn't leak anything. She waited because while Pete was planning a takedown, Jasmine was building a mirror. Not to fight him, to let him destroy himself. By the time she entered the hearing room, the plan was already in place. She had watched the same clip Pete rehearsed in Manhattan, the one where he called her an emotional placeholder for a failing party. She didn't flinch. She clicked pause, closed the video, and clicked print. Every time Pete misquoted the Constitution documented. Every time he cited sources that led to partisan blogs highlighted, what he thought was firepower was actually kindling. And she held the match. Inside the chamber, he smirked again, still confident, still oblivious, and outside, the first murmurs of a protest had begun. Signs with her name, stickers that read, "Jasmine doesn't miss." Pete adjusted his mic again, looked over at her, laughed, then fired one more shot. Maybe if the Congresswoman focused more on actual lawmaking than hair and hashtags. A pause, not laughter.
But
just the kind of silence that tastes cold. One. That makes people look around unsure if they heard what they think they heard. That's when Jasmine moved. One finger on her mic. One click. She looked up, made eye contact. The smile wasn't sweet. It was surgical. And Pete. He didn't know it yet, but the match had already been struck, and the fire. It was coming for him. He leaned in again, louder this time, more aggressive, more smug, like he thought. Raising his voice would raise his credibility. "I've read your speeches, Congresswoman. They sound more like campaign ads than serious arguments. I love sound bites, but let's be honest. When was the last time you read a bill cover to cover?" He looked around, waiting for laughter. One chuckle, maybe 2, the kind of laughs that don't last, that die in the throat. Jasmine stayed still. She tapped her pen once, then again measured .com. Deliberate. Pete mistook it for hesitation. He leaned even further across the table, voice thick with mockery. "Or are you waiting for someone to text you the answer?" That one landed. Not because it was clever, but because it crossed a line. The kind you don't see until you're already tumbling past it. The room didn't laugh. It paused, like it needed to ask, did he really just say that? Even the moderator shifted in his seat. A Senate staffer dropped their pen. Somewhere in the gallery, camera operator whispered, "This just turned," but Pete didn't feel it. He was too far inside his own show, too drunk on his own script. He turned to the audience, now speaking to the room instead of the committee. "We all know the game here. A few viral clips, some hashtags, a trending soundbite. And then what? A retweet from AOC? A campaign fundraiser email? Thought he was killing?" What he didn't see was Jasmine uncapping her pen. Still no words. Still no response, just quiet, coiled. "Ready, Pete?" Flashed a grin, crossed his arms, like a boxer taunting from the corner of the ring. You can't win a hearing with attitude.
Congresswoman.
A beat passed 2, then she moved. She set her pen down slowly, laced her fingers, and finally spoke. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. It sliced. "Are you done performing?" The words floated into the mic, clean, sharp, undeniable. Pete blinked, not because the words were loud, because they were true in the room. It was like someone flipped the current from his rhythm into hers. And Jasmine. She wasn't playing catch-up. She was taking the lead. One sentence for words, and Pete was already on the defensive. He didn't know it, but the clock had started. 17 seconds left. She tilted her head slightly, eyes locked on his. Voice steady, tone cold. "Do you actually want answers, or are you just here to hear yourself speak?" The words weren't loud, but they rang through the chamber like a dropped glass. Pete shifted in his seat. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Jasmine didn't wait. She reached into the folder, pulled out a single sheet. No theatrics. Gestures, just precision. "I've read every bill we're discussing today," she said, flipping it once, then laying it flat. "Page numbers, sections, line edits. Would you like me to walk you through them?" No sarcasm, just steel. The kind that cuts slowly and leaves a scar. Pete leaned back, smiled again. But it wasn't the same. There was tension behind his eyes now, a flicker of something he couldn't mask fast. Enough doubt the room noticed stayed. Scribbles slowed. The gallery leaned in. Even the moderator hesitated before reaching for his gavel, like he wasn't sure if this was still in his control. Jasmine didn't blink. "I don't do performance politics," she said, still calm. "Don't need camera time." She picked up the next page. "I came here with facts." Pete coughed. Once, short, awkward, tried to interrupt, but she held up. Finger, just one, and the room froze. That single gesture carried more command than all his shouting combined. She continued. "In fact, here's your own statement from last year." Slid the printed quote forward. "You claimed the military was being weakened by diversity hires in Congress." Pete's eyes widened, subtle, quick, but real. "That quote," she said, "was cited by 3 hate groups in the weeks after." Inflection. No anger, just exposure. The silence that followed didn't feel like tension. Anymore, it felt like heat. Heavy, pressurized. Pete sat back, eyes darting to the moderator, but the chairman didn't speak because now no one wanted to interrupt. For Jasmine had the floor, and power had shifted. Not through volume, through control. She looked at him again, and this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a countdown. 17 seconds of truth were on the way, and Pete was already drowning in the calm. Before the storm, she inhaled once, slow, controlled, then leaned slightly forward, voice steady, but razor sharp. "You questioned whether I could read legislation?" A pause. "You questioned whether I belong here." Another pause. "You questioned my intelligence, my career, and my value in front of millions watching." Her eyes didn't blink, not once. "You had 20 minutes to prepare insults." She turned the page. "I needed 17 seconds to end them." She slid one more document forward. "Here is your direct quote from February 8th, claiming the U.S. military has, quote, become a playground for affirmative action." Gasps. This time, audible. She didn't stop. "Here's the Department of Defense's rebuttal issued less than 48 hours after you said it, confirming you misrepresented the data." She flipped again. "And here's the footage, you on air, stating that certain members of Congress should earn their way into hearings, not trend their way in." Her voice didn't rise. It dropped. Lower, slower, more dangerous. "By that logic, sir, you shouldn't be here." The room froze. Pete's mouth opened slightly. A word tried to escape, but nothing formed. Jasmine leaned in just a breath closer. 17 seconds. "That's all I needed to prove. You don't come with facts. You come with fan fiction." Click. Turned off her mic, folded the folder shut, and sat back. Not a word. More, not a glance, just stillness. The room didn't move. Not at first. Not until someone in the gallery whispered, just loud enough for the mic to catch. She ended him. Then chaos.livestream chats exploded. Twitter lit up with domestic clips. Hit Instagram before the chairman even cleared his throat. Pete looked down, not at notes, not at rebuttals, at nothing, because there was nothing left to say. No angle, no spin, just 17 seconds of undeniable silence. And in that silence, Jasmine Crockett didn't just respond. She rewrote the entire hearing. Live, unscripted, and unforgettable. The clip spread like fire. 17 seconds, 17 measured. Devastating seconds. Posted, clipped, shared, reshared. Watch Jasmine Crockett dismantle Pete Hegseth. No notes. No mercy. Within minutes, it was everywhere. X, TikTok, Threads, YouTube Shorts, zoomed, dash, and edits. Subtitled breakdowns. Side-by-side reactions. Commentators paused mid-live stream just to play it back. News. Anchors called it the sharpest public dismantling of a pundit in years. But it wasn't just the words. It was the rhythm, the silence between them, the precision. In her tone, no yelling, no grandstanding, just a scalpel through ego. Audiences didn't just hear the down, they felt it, and they replayed it again and again. Jasmine didn't flinch, didn't smirk, she just ended it. Every second was a chess move. Line 1. Challenge his authority. Line 2. Reveal the quote. Line 3. Drop the contradiction. Line 4. Present the government's rebuttal. Line 5. Show the consequences. The hate groups who ran with his words and the final blow. By that logic, sir, you shouldn't be here. That was the quote, the mic dash drop, the moment people watched it like poetry. Journalists stacked it like a courtroom closing argument. Students posted reaction videos, breaking down her cadence like a masterclass in public speaking. Body language. Experts went on TikTok. Notice her stillness here. She's controlling the tempo. Watch how she pauses right before presenting the quote. That's power. Could his reaction, the throat swallow, the shifting eyes. Even late night. Shows paused their scripts to play it back. And across conservative media. Silence. Clips edited down. Context added. Spin applied, but nothing stuck, because the truth captured raw. In real time, doesn't need packaging. It just needs replay, in Jasmine's clip. It didn't just trend, it surged. The hearing was still live, but out there on every screen. In every scroll, the verdict had already landed. And Pete, he wasn't just being criticized, he was being studied, dissected. Men. And worst of all, he was being ignored because the story now wasn't about what he said. It was about how fast it fell. Part 17 seconds. That's all it took. Not just to win the moment, but to make history. By morning, Pete Hegseth's name wasn't just trending. It was melting the algorithm. Hegseth destroyed 17 seconds, Crockett clapped back in. The Daily Beast ran with 17 seconds of silence that ended a career. His team scrambled, emails flew, PR firms looped in. The damage control meeting started before sunrise. Get ahead of it. Control the narrative. She took it out of context. Play the veteran card. Say it was emotional manipulation. But they all knew this wasn't about content. It was about impact. Pete didn't lose the argument. He lost the room. And worse, he lost control of his image. By 10 a.m., every morning show was playing the clip. CNN ran a slow-motion version MSNBC brought. In body language experts, Fox News. They aired the segment once cut to commercial and never replayed it. On Capitol Hill, things moved fast. Jasmine Crockett's office received 40,000 emails in 12 hours. Staffers couldn't keep up. People were asking if she'd run for Senate, if she was writing a book, if she could give a TED Talk. If she could teach their daughter to speak like that in private rooms. Republicans were pissed. Not at Jasmine. At Pete, you gave her a platform. You walked in thinking you were the show. You got outplayed on camera by a first-term congresswoman from Texas, and she didn't even raise her voice. Chair of the hearing, normally reserved, Mild issued a public statement that afternoon. Today's proceedings reminded us why facts, it's not flair, must lead the conversation. That was aimed at Pete. Everyone knew it. Back on social media, something else was brewing. Clips from Pete's old segments resurfaced. Condescending comments about female senators, smirking through gun violence debates, laughing during segments about poverty. They weren't new, but now they had context. A face. A foil, Jasmine's. The contrast wasn't subtle. Him smug, loud, dismissive. Her calm, articulate, unshakable. People weren't just mocking Pete anymore. They were switching sides. And in PR, there's no recovery plan for losing cultural relevance, because once the memes start treating you as the setup, it's not the punchline, you're no longer the threat, you're the lesson. And Pete Hegseth, he had just become one. 3 days later, Jasmine Crockett walked into her office to find a pile of printed letters, not emails, not tweets, physical mail. each one handwritten, some in cursive, some shaky, some underlined like Gospel 1, came from a 73-year-old retired schoolteacher in Mississippi. It read, "I taught 8th grade civics for 29 years. I've never seen anyone explain the Constitution so clearly in so few words," cried. "When you shut your folder," another, from a college student in Detroit. "You didn't just answer him. You answered for all of us who've ever had to smile through insult." She hadn't expected this. Not this. The clip had gone viral. Yes, but this wasn't viral noise. It was generational resonance. And it wasn't just letters inside the Capitol. Something subtler shifted. When Jasmine walked down the hallway now, a few heads nodded who hadn't before. Usual smirks, gone. The quiet dismissals. Vanished. Even a certain senator, one who once referred to her as the TikTok congresswoman, paused mid-step when he saw her coming and offered a brief, hell of a hearing. She just nodded, didn't stop, didn't slow, because Jasmine knew what was happening and what came next. The media wanted more. The right wanted revenge. And the public. They wanted a repeat, but Jasmine had no interest in repeats. She was building a new rhythm, one clip at a time, one folder at a time, and Pete Hegseth. He finally issued a clarification, not an apology, on a podcast with 28,000 listeners. Something about passion, miscommunication, and taking things out of context. It didn't land, because while Pete tried to explain what happened, Jasmine never did. She didn't need to. The folder spoke, and that folder quiet. Heavy meticulous became a symbol. It had receipts. It had silence. And most importantly, it had the last word. Suddenly, other congresswomen began carrying similar folders. A quiet trend started. Deliberate, tactical, powerful. The press called it the Crockett effect. But Jasmine just called it being ready. "You don't have to yell," she said in a later interview, eyes level. "You just have to bring the truth." And the folder. The hearing room was quieter than usual. Not silent, just tense, like everyone was waiting for a storm they couldn't quite predict, because today, it wasn't Pete Hegseth at the table. It was Senator Thorne, veteran of 5 terms. Fox News regular. Known for speaking in parables that sounded biblical, but landed like threats. He sat back. Fingers steepled, that smug curve to his lips that men earn when they've never been told no in 30 years. "Congresswoman Crockett," he said without looking up from his notes. "I understand you've made quite the name for yourself, with your little showings." She said nothing, but her mic light turned red, and that meant she was on. "I'm not here to make a name," she said calmly. "I'm here because constituents can't afford insulin, teachers are buying their own supplies, and veterans are dying in parking lots." That got his eyes, just for a second. But Jasmine wasn't aiming for his attention. She was aiming for the record. Senator Thorne continued flipping a tab in her folder. "Last Thursday, you claimed on national television that our education bill smelled of socialism." She held up the transcript, and yet, 11. "You personally co-sponsored the Rural Charter Support Act, which funneled federal dollars into private institutions. With zero public accountability." The senator leaned forward, mouth tightening. "I was supporting options," he said. Jasmine raised a brow. "No, you were supporting a backdoor privatization pipeline, and you knew it." She tapped the document. "It's here, in the budget notes. You tried to bury it behind 5 pages of agricultural amendments." The room held its breath, but Jasmine kept going. "This isn't about a debate anymore. This is about memory. Yours seems selective. Mine comes printed, color-coded, and time-stamped." She slid another paper across the table, slowly like a final chess move. "Here's your signature, Senator." Then silence. The kind that swallows noise. Kind that doesn't need applause because everyone knows what just happened. "Senator." Thorne didn't answer. Not really. He shuffled papers. He cleared his throat. He mumbled something about context and team reviews, but it didn't matter, because the headline had already written itself in the minds of every viewer. Crockett outsmarts senior senator with his own signature. And as Jasmine leaned back and her chair folder closed, hands folded, she didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just stared forward, knowing full well she'd just turned the hearing into a courtroom. And in that courtroom, receipts ruled. It wasn't supposed to leave the room. That grainy still framed Jasmine Crockett's hand. Extended. The paper halfway across the table, Senator Thorne frozen. Eyes locked on his own signature. But by 3:12 p.m. it was on Twitter. By 3:18 p.m. it was a meme. When you lie, but she majored in receipts. 37,000 likes in under an hour. MSNBC clipped the moment by 3:45 p.m. TikTok had it in split screens with dramatic music before the hour was up. One viral edit had her slide the paper while Beyoncé's Flawless played in the background. She didn't repost it. She didn't need to, because the moment had done what months of debate and panels couldn't. It made the truth undeniable and the opposition nervous. In a Fox segment that evening, Pete Hegseth tried to reframe the moment. Tense. Hearing today, he said, nodding solemnly. But grandstanding doesn't equal governance. The clip cut quickly not to Jasmine Crockett's rebuttal, but to her eyes. That look, the one that didn't need words, didn't beg for a headline, just said, "You tried it." Behind closed doors, staffers scrambled, emails flew. Talking points were drafted. Someone even suggested leaking an old campaign donation Crockett once accepted until a junior. Aide pointed out it was from a community teachers union. Too clean, too solid, too late by midnight. Hashtag Jasmine with her receipts was trending. In 6 cities, and tucked away in her modest office, lights dimmed, phone on silent. Jasmine stared at her laptop, screened out not to watch herself, not for the applause, but to finish typing up her next brief. Because viral moments fade, but legislation doesn't. And while they were busy spinning stories, she was preparing the next signature. Move. The chamber used to buzz. Rustling papers. Quick murmurs. Coffee cups passed between aides, but not today. Today it's silent. When Jasmine Crockett steps through the doors, there's no whisper trail, no chuckles from Pete, no snide exchanges. Beneath breath, just stillness. Senator Blackburn glances at her, then quickly down. Thorne taps his pen. Once, twice, no more. In Pete Hegseth's seat, empty, he'd called out ill. But no one believed that. Even the chairwoman pauses when announcing Crockett's presence. She nods once, measured, formal, as if recognizing. What the room has now accepted, the balance has shifted. Jasmine takes her seat, calm/poised, no smirk, no self-congratulation. It's just presence. An aide leans in, whispering numbers from the live stream. 1.7 million views. 300K shares. Dozens of lawmakers tagged, but Crockett waves it away. This moment isn't about metrics. It's about momentum. A resolution. Is read aloud standard protocol? But even the usual partisan resistance is muted. Nobody wants to get clipped because they've all seen what 17 seconds can do. They've seen how a woman with a folder and a voice can detonate decades of power plays. Cameras pan quietly. Journalists scribble, but ask no questions. A Fox producer in the back shifts nervously. It's no longer about whether Jasmine Crockett can survive in this room. Now it's about who can survive her. 17 seconds. That's all it took. Cable news plays it on loop. Creators remix it into music videos. Teenagers lip sync it. Veterans salute it. The takedown becomes a political legend. Not because it was loud, but because it was truth. MSNBC calls it the clip that cracked the echo chamber. Fox refuses to air it, but their silence only makes it louder. Reddit threads dissect every syllable. One post goes viral. This wasn't a drag. This was a moral autopsy. But Crockett? She stays quiet. Until the Sunday after. National television. 1-on-1. A single chair, no audience. Just her, across from the journalist. No folder this time. I didn't go in there looking to end anyone, she says. But I came prepared to end a lie. She speaks plainly. No malice. No bitterness. Only conviction. We're not in a war of insults anymore. We're in a war of narratives. I won't let mine be written by someone who mocks the fight I live. The interviewer leans in, visibly moved. Do you think Pete Hegseth will respond? She smiles soft, almost maternal. He already did. He walked out of the room. Cut to the Capitol steps. Young girls hold signs that read, "I need 17 seconds." She didn't yell, she revealed. Veterans groups tweet their support. Activists flood the inboxes of lawmakers who laugh that day. Something shifts. It's no longer about Pete. It's about what happens when someone uses truth like a scalpel, not to wound, but to reveal what's already rotten. And so, Jasmine Crockett doesn't just win a moment, she ignites a movement, not because she was louder, but because she was undeniable.